American Urban Radio Networks.
Cornell William Brooks, President and CEO of the National NAACP. First and foremost, I want to thank you so much for coming to our home offices in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I know it's been a trying time for you with everything that's going on across the country.
Actually, it's a delight to be here. AURN has been a loyal supporter of the justice work of the NAACP. We could not be happier to be here at your headquarters and to be in the presence of people who do so much day in and day out to support the work.
We can have this conversation over and over, and I wanted to ask you, many times when you talk about racism in the United States and or just race in general, it's a very uncomfortable topic for many people. Given the chance to lead that discussion, how would you get people to be a little bit more inclusive in talking about race so that we can overcome the racial inequities that exist amongst this country?
Sure. I think the most important thing for us to do is to talk about who we are. If, as Americans, we believe in the promises of our democracy, if we really believe in what the American flag stands for and the values undergirding the American Constitution, talking about who we are as our best selves as a nation means that we're talking about a kind of constitutional and narrow national character that is antithetical to the bigotry, bias, and violence that we've seen in Charleston. And so it's an open and inclusive conversation. It's a conversation that reaffirms what we stand for. It is a conversation that reaffirms what our sailors, what our soldiers, what our Marines and our airmen have lived and died for on battlefields abroad and at home. And so when we talk about our character as a country, that's not an alienating conversation. That's not a distancing conversation. That is a reaffirming conversation. And in fact, it's the same conversation that your children are having every time they stand in front of a flagpole and pledge allegiance to the flag. They're having a conversation about who we are as a country. And so it is our belief that when you look at the history of the NAACP, that is a welcoming, I think, enthralling and inspiring history. Why? Because it represents the best of American values.
The first African-American president is coming to the end of his term in office. What would you like to see the next president and subsequent presidents going forward do to uphold the true essence of equality in this country?
Sure. Well, I would say as this president winds down his term, there are a couple of things I think are critically important. Number one, President Obama arrived in the White House by means of that sacred sacrament, secular sacrament, meaning the right to vote. We have to fix the Voting Rights Act. It is badly broken. Number two, when we look at the criminal justice challenges all across this country, the ugly byproduct of the era of mass incarceration, there are several things that we can do to derail that school-to-prison pipeline and decriminalize a class of citizens. That means building more schools, fewer jails, creating more opportunities for people to move toward work and school as opposed to prisons and jails. Going beyond that, we have to eliminate some of the barriers to employment that people with criminal records face. Now, looking at the next president, one of the things that I think we have to be clear about is we cannot have presidents arriving on the doorstep of the White House not having discussed the challenges of race. No person should consider themselves qualified to run or much less serve as president if they have in fact not addressed one of the most pressing challenges of our time. So how is it that we can have a whole gaggle of presidential contenders who think they cannot comment on whether or not the Confederate flag needs to come down? That's a little like not commenting on foreign policy, not speaking about the need to address terrorism. We've had an act of domestic terrorism, racialized terrorism in our midst. And for them to think that they can duck the question, evade the question, blink the question is quite simply irresponsible.
Cordell William Brooks, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate everything. All right.
American Urban Radio Networks is Urban America's radio leader.